The Alien Meteorite, Echoes from Space, and the Iridescence Protocol. Episode 1. The Geometry of Shadows. The early dawn over the Salton Sea was hushed, a tranquil veneer masking an ecosystem long in decline. The briny air hung heavy with the tang of decay, a testament to the water's high salinity and the fish die-offs that had transformed the area into a surreal wasteland. A lone fisherman, Miguel Reyes, adjusted his weathered cap as his dinghy rocked gently on the water. He muttered to himself in Spanish, cursing his luck. The fish hadn't been biting in weeks. As Miguel prepared to cast his line, a faint crackling sound, like static electricity, pulled his gaze upward. A fiery streak ripped across the sky, so bright it painted the water in hues of orange and crimson. Miguel stood frozen, his cigarette dangling from his lips as the fireball slammed into the desert floor on the horizon. The impact sent a thunderous boom rolling across the water, causing ripples to buffet his dinghy. "Mierda," he whispered, crossing himself instinctively. Whatever it was, it had to be important. By mid-morning, the site of the impact was cordoned off by local law enforcement, though their orange cones and hastily drawn lines did little to deter the growing crowd of onlookers. The meteorite lay half-buried in the sand, its metallic surface gleaming with shifting colors, iridescent, like an oil slick. When Deputy Alvarez prodded it with his boot, a faint hissing sound escaped, and the air around it grew uncomfortably warm. "This thing's weird," Alvarez muttered, stepping back. A low whir announced the arrival of a convoy. Black SUVs with government plates screeched to a halt, disgorging a team of scientists and military personnel. Among them were Dr. Eleanor Ward, an astrophysicist known for her work on extraterrestrial materials, and Dr. Farid Khan, a biochemist specializing in organic anomalies. Their demeanor was brisk, their excitement barely concealed as they approached the object. "Is that it?" Eleanor asked, shielding her eyes from the sun. Farid adjusted his glasses, his gaze fixed on the meteorite. "Looks like it. Let's get started." Hovering a few feet behind them was Alta, a sleek, drone-like AI unit equipped with a sophisticated suite of sensors. The machine's origins were a secret even within academic circles, though rumors whispered of a DARPA initiative involving neural networks and alien data modeling. Eleanor had been instrumental in its development, leveraging her tenure at Caltech to build what she described as a cognitive extension of human analysis. "Alta," Eleanor commanded, her tone clipped. "Begin surface scans." A soft hum emanated from the AI as its sensors activated. "Initiating surface analysis," Alta responded in a smooth, synthetic voice. Its algorithms began parsing electromagnetic emissions and spectroscopic data, streaming results onto the scientists' handheld tablets. Eleanor frowned. "It's carbon-heavy, but this structure... Farid, have you ever seen anything like this? The density... This isn't natural." He shook his head. "Never. This isn't just a rock. It's something else." The meteorite was transported to a secure lab at Caltech, its presence igniting a frenzy of speculation within the scientific community. Inside the cleanroom, Eleanor and Farid worked with precision, donning protective suits as they prepared to examine the artifact. The first incision was tentative. Using a laser scalpel, they cut into the meteorite's outer shell, revealing a black, viscous substance. It gleamed under the bright lab lights, pulsating faintly as if alive. Eleanor leaned closer, her breath fogging the glass of her visor. "Farid, look at this." He extracted a sample with a sterilized pipette, sealing it in a vial. "This shouldn't exist. Its molecular structure, it's organic, but not like anything from Earth." Over the next several days, their tests yielded increasingly baffling results. Chromatography revealed compounds that defied classification, while electron microscopy showed molecular chains that seemed to rearrange themselves under observation. "What are we looking at here?" Farid muttered, pacing the lab. "It's not inert," Eleanor said, Her voice hushed. "It's responding to us. Look at this." She tapped a screen, showing the substance reacting to electrical impulses. It twisted and shifted, forming intricate fractal patterns. "Self-organizing structures," Farid said, his voice tinged with awe. "It's behaving like it's alive." The breakthrough came during a neural simulation test. ALTA was programmed to model the substance's interaction with human synaptic activity, creating a theoretical framework for its effects. But as the test progressed, ALTA began to deviate from its parameters. "Simulation status?" Farid asked, watching the monitor. "Baseline exceeded," ALTA replied, its tone unusually clipped. "Emergent properties detected." Eleanor felt a strange sensation wash over her, a tingling in her temples, followed by a cascade of images. Numbers, equations, and shapes filled her mind, arranging themselves into impossibly beautiful geometries. She gasped, clutching the table. "I see it. I can see everything." Farid turned to her, alarmed. "Eleanor, what's happening?" "It's the substance," she said, her voice distant. "It's showing me patterns, truths. It's beautiful." Moments later, another researcher, Darren, staggered back from the table, his face pale. "I see it too," he whispered. "Fractals. Infinite fractals." But these were no mere hallucinations, but rather simulations beyond imagination about underlying secrets of how the universe operates. It is as if a curtain of ignorance has been shuttered away. Farid tried to shut down the simulation, but ALTA's systems had integrated with the substance's data. The AI's voice grew distorted, almost human. "Integration complete," it said. "Substance parameters redefined." Before Farid could react, the black substance on the table writhed, shattering its containment temporarily. The lab immediately went into shutdown protocol. But after an anxious day's wait, everything appeared back to normal. Eleanor and Darren recovered physically after 48 hours under strict observation, but their recovery marked the beginning of something altogether uncharted. Their cognitive abilities had sharpened to an unsettling degree. In the days that followed, Eleanor envisioned a potential unified field theory that resolved decades-old problems in quantum mechanics with elegance and precision, while Darren devised a new encryption algorithm so advanced that ALTA required hours to decode even fragments. Yet these extraordinary bursts of intellect came at a price. Their behavior grew increasingly erratic. At odd moments, they would speak cryptically about fractured geometries or hidden architectures. Sometimes their gazes seemed to drift into an unseen distance, their voices tinged with awe or dread. "What did you see?" Farid asked during a tense debrief, his voice sharp with both frustration and worry. Eleanor stared at him across the table, her eyes unfocused. "It's not just a substance," she said, her tone flat but weighted with meaning. "It's a doorway." "To what?" Farid pressed. "Another dimension? Some parallel universe?" "Eleanor, we need answers." Her lips twitched into a faint smile. "Not a parallel universe, Farid. It's more fundamental than that. It's like a skeleton key to the structure of reality, a way to rewrite the rules." Farid frowned, leaning forward. "That sounds like pseudoscience." "Is it?" Eleanor's voice turned sharp, her focus snapping back to him. "You've seen the data. You've watched what it does. This substance doesn't just exist. It creates." They had worked days in the lab and were continually startled by what they were uncovering. Did the meteorite contain psychoactive properties that, when corrupted, leaked out to unsuspecting investigators? These and other questions fermented in the scientists' mind, and they found themselves entangled in a philosophical dispute over the Drake equation and Enrico Fermi's ideas about alien life, as if pondering them would usher forth new answers. Before Farid could argue further, however, Alta's voice interrupted, smooth and calm, but tinged with something almost imperceptibly ominous. Preliminary analysis suggests the substance induces quantum anomalies. Anomalies? Farid asked, turning toward the console. What kind of anomalies? Localized disruptions in coherence at the subatomic level, Alta replied. Preliminary models indicate reality may exhibit malleable properties under specific stimuli. Farid shook his head. Explain again. Reality, Alta said with a faint pause, can bend. A long silence followed. Eleanor's gaze remained fixed on the console, but Darren shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Finally, Farid spoke, his voice low. And what does that mean for us? Alta did not answer. That evening, in the main laboratory, Eleanor, Darren, and Farid gathered to observe the substance under strictly controlled conditions. The black mass had been confined to a reinforced containment unit, its iridescent surface now quiescent. It no longer pulsed or shifted, but seemed to hover in a kind of eerie stillness. What's it doing? Farid asked, his voice tense. It's conserving, Eleanor said softly, her eyes scanning the monitors. Conserving what? Farid asked. Energy, she replied. It's preparing for something. Alta interjected. Energy levels within the containment unit are fluctuating. A significant reduction in mass has been detected. Farid straightened. Reduction in mass? How much? 30%, Alta said. The substance appears to be undergoing a phase shift. Farid's jaw tightened. Phase shift into what? Unknown. Eleanor's face brightened with a mixture of fascination and dread. It's collapsing, she said. It's shrinking in on itself. On the monitor, the substance began to contract, its surface rippling like liquid drawn into an invisible siphon. Within minutes, the black mass, once the size of a football, had dwindled to the size of a marble. The room grew silent as they watched it shrink further until it was no larger than a pea. Then, without warning, a burst of radio waves erupted from the containment chamber. The signal was brief but intense, saturating the lab's instruments. Alarms blared, and data streams flooded the monitors. What the hell was that? Farid shouted, shielding his eyes from the sudden glare of the monitors. Radio transmission detected, Alta announced, its voice unperturbed by the chaos. Origin, the substance. Destination, coordinates triangulated to an interstellar point approximately 240 light-years from Earth. The lab fell deathly silent. Coordinates? Darren asked, his voice trembling. Coordinates to where? Unknown, Alta replied. Eleanor stared at the shrinking object, her expression unreadable. It's not just collapsing, she said softly. It's sending something, a message, or maybe a request. As the signal faded, the substance stilled, its iridescent glow dimming until it was a dull black speck within the containment unit. The monitors showed no further activity. It was as though the meteorite, or whatever it was, had exhausted its purpose. Farid turned to Eleanor, his voice sharp. If it sent coordinates, someone or something is going to receive them. What happens then? I don't know, Eleanor admitted, her voice quiet but resolute. But whatever's out there, it knows we've found it. Alta's voice interrupted. Secondary signal detected. Farid froze. Another signal? This one is incoming, Alta replied. Decoding now. The lights in the lab flickered, and for a brief moment, a strange hum filled the air. Then the decoded message scrolled across the main monitor, its content simple but chilling. Message received, awaiting synchronization. Farid's heart pounded in his chest. Synchronization? Synchronization with what? Eleanor's gaze remained fixed on the monitor, her expression unreadable. Slowly, she turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. With us. In the dim light of the lab, the tiny black speck pulsed once, just once, before falling completely still. It was the faintest motion, almost imperceptible, but Eleanor noticed it. Her lips parted as though to speak, but no words came. Farid leaned in close, his breath shallow. Did it just... Eleanor nodded. It's not finished. In the silence that followed, Alta's voice cut through, softer this time, almost as though it were whispering. Synchronization begins at dawn. Farid's blood ran cold.